live, and my camera froze again. Because no good reason. It just keeps doing it.
You were having that problem last night, I noticed on.
Yeah, but it was the Discord thing. I could tell it was because like I could just stop and restart my camera or in Discord in the call, but I just made it so it's feeding directly from my camera and it's refusing to do it. Just makes no sense. It's like right here. Oh, you know what? What is this reset bullshit? Alright. Seems to be working. It'll have to do.
All right, I posted to the Facebook and to the Twitter. So
Okay. I won't bother then. Yeah, you keep posting it like just using your account on Facebook instead of putting it in the page for some reason.
because I can't figure out how to do that properly on the page, so I guess I could try to do that.
Yeah, there should be a drop down like posting as that you can use, or where you're posting to. Whenever you're posting anything, you should have a little on a page you manage drop down type thing.
Yeah, I'm not able to load here. There
Okay.
we go. All right,
I can start doing it.
Post there.
Looks like we're ready to go a little early.
All right.
If you want to.
Yeah, sure. Why not? It's only a couple of moments. That's fine. It's only 3 minutes.
All right.
Devil is amongst us. Stay back, boy. This calls for divine intervention. I kick ass for the Lord.
With guns, you can kill terrorists. With education, you can kill terrorism. Malala Yousafzai.
Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Matthew 7:15.
Empathy is not simply a matter of trying to imagine what others are going through, but having the will to muster enough courage to do something about it. In a way, empathy is predicated upon hope. Cornel West.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me into the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anoint my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all of my days of my life, and I will be dwelleth in the house of the Lord forever. Psalms 23, 1-6. Let's talk about the Capitol riots.
Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast to reclaim faith in the context of political discussion. I'm September, and you can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9 of 12, and hear me on the Geek Grills podcast. Heresy and Hearsay is a Patreon site. You can find that at patreon.com/heresy and hearsay. Visit there today to help support us. Just $2 a month goes a long way to help us make this humble show. You can also contribute with bits in Twitch or subscribe for free if you have Amazon Prime. And with me, the man with the word about the word, Reverend Barney.
Salutations, true believers. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII, and you can follow the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any podcast catcher. Just look for Heresy and Hearsay. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow to us. Also give us a review. That helps others find us. We have a new and improved website that you can listen to our past shows as well as find bios on each of us at heresyandhearsay.com. So, first off, before a couple of small bits of house cleaning. We're not going to be on next week. We are going to be doing some house cleaning for ourselves and everything, but we will be back the following week. So I just wanted to clear that up, and I also wanted to say that I hope everybody had a good Martin Luther King's Day yesterday. I did want to bring that up very quickly. That was something that was on my mind yesterday, so I wanted to bring that up real quick about that situation or about that day yesterday. Because we didn't do a show or anything, but I just wanted to let it be known that we did. I, at least in my mind, that it was, in my thoughts, I watched some, speeches and things like that. So we're going to go through some painful stuff and talk about the Capitol, and talk about the Capitol riots and the sedition and everything else. And we're going to try to do it in a very surgical and a very newsworthy way, and try to bring as much facts to it without doing any speculations of, any conspiracy theories or anything like that. There's a lot of it out there.
It's
So
not our wheelhouse.
yeah, that's not our wheelhouse.
This is not our cult.
I do want to call out and say that one of my idols, Keith Olbermann, is kind of propagating a theory out there, and I want to say to him, please don't. There's no facts to what is being propagated, what you're saying.
Who
I'm
is?
not going to repeat it because there's no proof of it. There's no real evidence of it, and I feel that it does you a disservice. It does Americans a disservice to play that game, especially on our side, when so many facts are on our side that we don't need to add to that with conspiracy theories and with propaganda that we don't have evidence of. What we have evidence of and what we have information of is enough and is damning enough. We don't need to add stuff to it. So, Mr. Oberman, you're an idol of mine, and I respect you. You don't need to do that. And I would,
Ooh, I missed this. I don't.
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. I'll tell you off air what it is,
Okay.
but it's. I'm less than pleased with that situation, because there's no real evidence to it. With that being said, so there's a couple of we'll briefly go over a couple of things. There are two things that we'll be putting in our notes. One is the security timeline that happened before and during the attack, which is whistles, bells, and alarms that were going off well before the attack actually happened that were not heeded or were ignored by the administration that was in power at the time. NPR did a really good breakdown of it. And one of the things that, was kind of scary about that situation is, how much information was being propagated and being tracked, and how unprepared everyone was at the Capitol building. This was something that was seen, and a lot of people thought it was a credible threat, and it was sat on. You posted something I see here. Do you want to talk about it for a second? It's right under the timeline of the security or the attack. You want to talk about that, and then we can talk about.
Yeah, because I mean, I've known about this for a long time. I've followed this kind of story, brought it up in different contexts, and there's a lot of things where in this timeline where uh, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI didn't do their part to create the paperwork once these threats were being reported by police, and they had this evidence and this knowledge, and they didn't do what they needed to do to put a plan in place. So, and I was reading a lot today about things that are being set up for tomorrow for the inauguration, and that there's stuff we'll talk about later with that. And but reading through it all again brought to mind that supremacists in this country have been infiltrating purposefully, organized in an organized manner, um, infiltrating our police forces and our military. And this article that I put in our notes, they'll be on our page, and I'll put them in the chat in a minute. That the FBI was warned of white supremacist law enforcement 10 years ago. This article was in 2016. So there's been like another, this has been going on for so long. So even finding officers, and I've seen other commentators and media people talk about this, like finding enough officers that are not sympathetic to the cause of these extremists that are trying to overthrow and disturb our democracy could be challenging in itself. It's scary, but it's intentional. I mean, all cops are bad is not there for no reason. The systemic, racist persecution of our fellow Americans by police forces that bullies, they've got a certain amount of, they can't be prosecuted, and they've been taking advantage of that. But now trying to find like people who will just do their damn job and uphold the law could be challenging at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking about the Klan here. That
Yeah.
is like, hey, let's start all trying to, get cops so that what we're doing will be acting, will be exempt from the law in these kind of actions. And it's been going on in this country for a very long time and ignored. And not, the vetting doesn't take place. I mean, they have to end qualified immunity, but they also
Yeah.
need to vet, I think, all of our law enforcement and our military more carefully on a regular basis to stop this. I mean, talk about the danger of actual revolution, sedition, undermining our great democratic experiment that this country is. I mean, under the guise of patriotism, these extremists have taken power.
Well, I mean, you think about it. I was. It's so funny. I would. Sometimes I get down on a rabbit hole. It'll come to a point. Sometimes I get down on a rabbit hole when I'm watching YouTube videos, and I got down this rabbit hole of people reacting to music. And there was this young guy listening to "Killing in the Name of" for the first time, and this song was 23 years old,
Yeah.
and it's still relevant. And the first time he heard it was during the lockdown. All right as the Black Lives Matter marches were happening, and he's going, "How old is this song? These guys were prophets." And it's like, no, this has just been there's been some people that have noticed it this entire time and been trying to sound these alarms, and nobody's been paying attention. And
Yeah, because from a place of privilege, people aren't used to, like, if they don't see it themselves, it's not true, and they
right.
think that's some kind of way to judge things. Like, well, it's not real if I didn't see it. Is
when when I
stupid.
and I've said this before, but when I was delivering pizza, and I pull up, and it's a captain of the county police in my area, and I ring his doorbell, and it plays Dixie.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
what?
I had to go pick up my son's ACT prep paperwork from the school today, and I saw a sign, a homemade sign in Troutman,
Mm-hmm.
we're in North Carolina, for any of you who don't know. And it was wood. I mean, hardcore. They put this in their yard like they mean it, hand stenciled. And it seriously said, "Defy Tyrant Cooper." And I had a very unpleasant, unkind thought about the logical extreme that could befall such people who are so anti-mask and so uncaring about other people. But
Yeah.
anyway, I got
So
triggered even before I had to do this show and relive January 6th nightmare. So
yeah, it's one of those. I mean, but it's one of those situations where, I mean, when we went live and did it, and we were watching those videos of the police, and there's been more videos that have been released since then. There was a video I saw of this police officer while the QAnon shaman was like up in the Senate pulpit, shouting whatever he was shouting and everything else. There is a police officer is like very calmly, very trying to ask them if they would be so kind as to leave. And you're thinking to yourself, if these people were Muslim, if they were African American, or if they were black, or Hispanic, or a person of color of any kind,
yeah, I don't know that that's though the most helpful comparison. I mean, that's what the other side's doing, right? Like, well, we didn't destroy anywhere near as much stuff, or kind of bullshit. And it's apples and oranges in some ways. I like the way it's been put by some activists that it's not that we want you to enact violence upon them. We want you to just not enact violence upon us.
right. And that's true. Yeah, I agree to that. I
Like,
understand that.
treat
I'm
us like
just
that, okay?
Yeah. How about you not shoot us? That would be great. That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, like
But
I almost cried. Like, I don't remember who first tweeted the whole, like, this is a hell of a way to find out that the police do know how to use nonviolent tactics.
yeah, it's true. I
That was
mean, yeah.
heartbreaking.
But and the other thing that struck me is when I was looking, and this is a Wikipedia article, but it's got, and I'm using the Wikipedia because it's concise, but there are plenty, and they have the link trees, and so you can follow all the link trees, and they are perfectly fine link trees. Wikipedia is a fine starting point. Okay, so I have no problems with Wikipedia as a whole, but the timelines of the actual events are extremely important. What I found most disturbing is the timeline from when it was basically declared, help, we need help at the Capitol, to when the DOD finally said, okay, we will muster up the National Guard, was 90 minutes, and it was going to take another 2 hours before they got there. And that was the case. It was 3.5 hours before the National Guard even the first set of National Guards even showed up at the Capitol for the DC National Guard. Now, Maryland saw what was going on and had already started mustering when it was first starting to happen, and Virginia was doing the same thing. So they were able to mobilize. They were able to get there about the same time as DC was once they got the clearance. But they had to wait until they get the clearance from the DOD because they were crossing lines, and the DOD had to agree to it because of the fact that there's no governor in DC. And that's why DC needs to be a statehood, so the governor of DC could then say, hey, National Guard, go and do this, instead of it
Well,
being
and the Capitol Police Chief had asked permission from
right.
Housing Senate security officials to ask for the Guard on January 4th.
Yeah. Yeah, because they knew what was possibly going to happen and everything else. And that was the other outcry about the whole situation is that when the Black Lives Matter march happened, all those all the National Guard that was out guarding national monuments and stuff like that. But with this whole situation, there was no National Guards that were mobilized until after things went south. And that is problematic in its own right, and very, very telling, about the situation and about
It
what was going on.
unfortunately is. I when we were covering this live, I it really seemed, and all I had seen immediately was a big lack of response
Hmm.
by the Capitol Police that were stationed there. However, I have since seen and read an awful lot about the pushback that they did enact. I mean, they were just so outnumbered. And these
Hmm.
failings by our government agencies is why, but I don't fault those officers that stood their ground and do their job. I mean, there have been a handful of suspensions
Right.
that are more than a little terrifying. A lot of people were up in arms about selfies, but I have seen, law enforcement people talk about, well, I mean, act friendly with them. You're trying to de escalate and you're gathering evidence. However, there was one officer in DC who has since been suspended who put on a mega cap and started directing them through the Capitol.
Yeah, yeah. That that's
Yuck.
that's that's a bridge too far, as they would say. So that's, yeah. There comes a point where you're being helpful, and instead of trying to de-escalate, where you're not doing your job at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
and
But
and,
it's.
and there were a lot of heroes, and we'll speak of one of them at the end. But
Mhm.
yeah, there were a lot of people that were doing their job and doing the best that they could with the situation. No, uh, I think, when we look at that video of the DC police, of the Capitol Police opening the gates and stuff, is like, we either do that or they're going to hurt themselves. And
There's actually another video of a different point of view of that,
mhm,
filmed from a different view, and it
right.
does not appear that they were actually moving them. So,
Well, and on either side of that coin, because of the fact that I mean, it was like 4 or 5 cops there, okay,
yeah.
and they
And
were
there's a
going to get,
tactic where you pull back
yeah, and
and concentrate your
and
tiny
that's,
little
look,
force.
yeah, right, and because we know what the timeline is now, we can step back and go, okay. And I think that the initial reaction, I think, was justified, but it's only because we were horrified at the fact of how undermanned this was, knowing that this was a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, we had no way to know what to make of that. It was so
Right.
the opposite of so many forceful things we've seen during protests in the
Hmm.
last year. Like, good lord. But yeah, I mean,
So,
there's still a lot to look at and a lot being investigated about inside, forces inside
well,
the
yeah,
Capitol that
that's one
enabled
of the
this.
things. That's one of the things is that there has been a couple of Congress. That's one of the things I wanted to touch on, is that there's been a couple of Congress people that have come forward and said, "Hey, some of the members of the Congress gave tours to people that were at the riots the next day, and gave tours of of the Capitol building the next day." And they are calling foul on that because there hasn't been any Capitol tours since March
Hmm.
because of the COVID thing.
Yeah, and I don't
And
think they're investigating it now, but I don't believe they haven't released information yet about names of the visitors and if they were actually part of the riot, but it is being investigated. Um, and there's every reason to believe these other congresspeople because they noticed. They're like, why are they touring people today? We don't do that right now.
yeah,
That's kind of weird. So we'll see what that uncovers. The panic buttons being removed from Ayanna Presley's office
yeah,
is also under investigation by the House Administration Committee. I'm very curious to see how that turns out. Like, who in the world? I mean, was it a maintenance person? Or did somebody in our government order these panic buttons to be taken out? They were in the offices, and I haven't gotten an update on it recently. A few other representatives had these panic buttons in their offices that were installed after they got a whole bunch of death threats, and they had done drills with them.
right,
So it's not just like them saying they had them, and then this attack happened, and they went to push the button, and it wasn't there.
right.
The rep wasn't even there. She heard about it later, but it was her staff that was like, where the hell the buttons go. So I'm very curious to see how that investigation turns out. Like, there, how would no one tell the rep they were taking them out?
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's
I know.
so far outside of like how, I mean, even at a normal job, any kind of like, we're getting new equipment, we're taking out new equipment, we're putting in new equipment. Like, this is going on. I mean, I know they don't staff a lot again because of COVID right now, so it would have been easy to go in and do without anyone noticing. But
Right.
there would have been an email. Somebody had to make the work order,
Right.
or it's just somebody who works there, so they
Yep.
could just walk in and do it.
Yeah.
Because they're part of the cult. And that would show, along with other things, a definite intent to cause harm
Yeah.
and premeditated.
Yeah, and that's where that rabbit hole that I was messaging September last night before, and I was like, this rabbit hole. When I started doing this rabbit hole kept getting deeper, and I'm like, oh, this is so dark. I'm like, because I kept looking at all this stuff that was that from legitimate sources. Not even, like I said, I'm not even looking at, I didn't look at any, other sources. I was just looking at legitimate sources, but just how deep and how dark some of this went and everything else. And I was just,
And potentially. I mean, again, there's a lot of investigations.
right. Understandable. There is, but it's just, there's, it, it shakes you a bit, and it worries you, especially when you look at certain things. I mean, after the attack and everything, you still had 6 senators and a number of congressmen who still voted to reject the honest and free election of the Electoral College after the attack.
Yeah.
There were going to be more senators. There initially it was going to be like 13 of them, and pardon me, but it dwindled down to 6. And there were 2 that were leading that charge. And since then, those 2 individuals, Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, I've, they did it strictly because they wanted to get their names in lights, and they wanted to be like the new front runners for the Trump MAGA group and everything else. But honestly, I think this has backfired on both of them, because they may not have a Senate
Well, we
career.
won't know until 2024.
Well, true, but they may not be in the Senate much longer, depending on what the investigation pulls up, because there's investigations on both of them as well. They may be there is a strong call to have them both pulled from the Senate. And the thing is, because both of the states are Republican states, that would be replaced by Republicans, so it wouldn't be a Mitch McConnell and them would be willing to give them up for other members that would be less problematic in the Senate, because they would still be Republican senators. So I think
I mean, we'll
be
see how
willing.
it plays out. Cruz has stepped in it so many times and been so ridiculous, and it hasn't hurt him yet. So
Yeah,
I don't have a lot of high hopes for that. I really don't. Just because
but
some of his staff finally got fed up with his bullshit.
yeah,
That electorate is, yeah.
well, Josh Hawley's home state and both of the major papers, and even his home state, the electorate in his home state is calling for his head. They are looking at him in a less than favorable light at this point. So he's a young man, and he has. I don't think he's done himself any services, especially that picture of him giving the fist in the air symbol.
Yeah.
That that has been plastered everywhere. And the Lincoln Project has went after him hard.
Yeah,
They want his scalp.
that hasn't. Well, whatever. We
No,
can hope
I
they
under-
have consequences. We'll see.
yeah, I'm
I mean,
hoping for
people have
some.
been
Yeah,
voting through for those people through all this stuff for a long time. They support it. So
mm,
the newspapers don't do a lot of damage to white politicians,
mm,
honestly. Endorsements don't mean as much to them because they don't need them. They don't need that kind of "you're legitimate," which is actually something I was interested in reading the Obama book. But anyway,
yeah, it does. It's been interesting what newspapers used to be a big deal about who they endorsed and who they didn't endorse, but it doesn't do that so much anymore. And this fast-paced media that we have these days.
yeah, reading here, the paper here is the comments section on the newspaper is painful. Um,
Uh,
and they it's a newspaper. They report facts, and it's like an AP story, and then people will just attack the paper, and it's a liberal rag. The Record and Landmark in Statesville. No, no, it's not. These are just facts, you nut jobs. Um,
They're just reporting the facts, you silly. I
oh,
know.
good
Uh,
gracious, yeah. I have to say, looking through the kind of sources we tend to use, PBS and NPR and things. Um, I am very disappointed in the media right now because even articles being printed about this today are referring to those people as demonstrators. Like in captioning pictures of them
yeah,
inside the Capitol with broken shit, calling them demonstrators is upsetting.
yeah,
Why not terrorist rioters? Uh, you can call him a revolutionary for if you want, call him a seditionist, but calling them demonstrators is offensively inaccurate.
yeah. Especially when the same
Like
organizations
not
would,
even protesters,
right?
demonstrators. Stop that.
Yeah,
That's enabling.
yeah. Because when you would look at the Black Lives Matter, and they would lump those few individuals who would do the rioting or whatever, and they would lump all the people, and then it turned into this mob of rioters. And like, no, most of
Yeah. Does it remind you
most
of
of the pro
Katrina coverage?
what's that?
Does it remind you of Katrina coverage too?
Yeah, it does.
As if like, only people of color loot.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, we're still dealing with that. We're still having that problem. And there's it just came out today by the Daily Beast that Fox News is getting rid of a bunch of their normal news people and adding more right wing people onto Fox News because they were upset that Arizona was called for Biden. And so they are getting rid of even more people that were legitimate news people on Fox News. This just came out in the Daily Beast today. And I'm just, we we have a problem with our media. We have a problem with there's not there's not I feel that we have to be fair and we have to be honest. Protesting is a perfect and legal right, and anybody can protest anything. And I have no problems with whoever protesting whatever. That's fine. You can do that. When you become a rioter or when you become seditionist or whatever, that's where it becomes a problem. And this goes for the those individuals who were bad actors in the Black Lives Matter protests. that, after most of the Black Lives Matter protesters went away, they would do these riots, and then everybody got lumped in. I, disavowed the rioters. As far as that's concerned, property damage does not solve problems. I know the reason why, and I understand the frustration, but it doesn't help. The same thing with this here. These were not demonstrators. These were not protesters. These were rioters. At least these were terrorists. That terrorists and seditionists is what they were.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be fair and we have to be honest about what we call people on both sides of the fence, or we're not being honest in our media. And speaking of media, Donald Trump decided that while the protesting, and we played this when we were doing it live, the thing that got him kicked off of social media for 12 hours initially was that video of him that we played on the show. It was a minute thing that basically was just more fuel to the fire, and that got him booted off of Twitter for 12 hours. And then Twitter decided, you know what? Enough's enough, and you need to just be off of Twitter. And Facebook banned him. And he is banned off of so much stuff now. I don't even know what Shopify is. I have no idea. Pornhub posted that he is banned off of Pornhub. You know, I posted that we're hoping to have guests soon, and Donald Trump is banned from our channel as well. He is not allowed to be on our channel and be in our chat room. He is banned from our chat room. This, we have made that executive decision. I mean, everybody else was banned. Why not? But he was banned from everything. He was banned from.
Yeah,
I did.
I'm not against deplatforming. I understand people having problems with it, but I just don't have a problem with. I mean, somebody is posing a clear and present danger, brick their phone, which is the way he
Yeah.
uses it. His phone's been effectively bricked.
Well, I'm sure he can still play games on it, but I'm like, other than that, yeah, social media, no. He was, yeah. It's funny. He wanted to ban TikTok, but TikTok banned him instead. It's just one of those
Right?
things. So he's banned off of everything. I think it's years too late. They should have started looking at that back, when he was doing his
Yeah.
Eartherism stuff. He was a danger then, but he was
I mean,
bringing.
he's bordered on hate speech so many times, and his dog
Mhm,
whistling is hate
yeah,
speech, and that's against terms of service too. It should have happened before now.
yeah. And YouTube is finally saying that people like Louder with Crowder and those kind of groups are like, hey, you get 3 strikes, you're out.
Hmm.
Which before, those big channels were never going to be in danger, but now they can be in danger. So good on them finally, but it would have been nice if they would have done all of them would have done their terms and services equally. I think that would have been the only fair thing to do. But
Hmm.
money changes a lot of things, and you got people like Elon Musk who can still post some really hateful stuff on his thing, and he's not being deplatformed or taken off of Twitter.
Right.
So, so that's the thing is that people who have a lot of followers who bring them a lot of money is still not going to be deplatformed, until it gets to the point where it becomes too problematic. And the other thing is that not now conservatives don't even have Parlor anymore. Um, Apple and Google said, you know what, you guys don't monitor this enough. We're going to take you off of our stores. And then Amazon was like, nope, we're not even going to have you on
Yeah,
our
we're not going to
servers.
host you. So.
Yeah. Because you guys are dangerous and scary. And so,
Yeah, and I mean the guy I saw the owner, the parlor guy on the news, and I mean, he refused to enforce any kind of, terms of service, and so I mean that's how this works. These are, and it's funny because those kind of people with those belief systems tend to be like so pro capitalism and private companies should run everything, and then unless they disagree with you, right?
Right.
So I see you posted about the article about faith and evangelicalism and how it feeds into this stuff, and I know you're going to want to talk about that. I will tell you that I was playing World of Warcraft the other night,
Yeah.
and I got a message from a relative in Canada
Okay.
about this article. Uh, he had read it, I posted on my Facebook page, and he was like, just saying, I mean, what a great, great article this is. I did post the link in our chat, and I will put it on our website. And it is a really interesting examination of how they have intertwined this faith with their so-called patriotism and their, nationalistic tendencies, and how it's all been intertwined. And it's not just the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Where all these crazies are acting out, and I wanted to share that with you. And it's a little extra alarming. I mean, we think of Canada as being a little more reasonable. However, he has a friend who is thinking about putting her dog down because she's not going to get the vaccine, and is concerned about then the government's going to come and take her away, and her dog's going to be left alone. So, yeah.
Okay. Well,
And a whole there's like a whole long story of all the crazy, and yeah, it's not just here. Yike.
well, here's the thing. There was something that I also saw that was very interesting. Did you know that before Dr. Seuss became who we know him as, he was a propagandist for the United States? He worked
Yes,
for Okay.
I have a whole book about it. It's um and I lend it to teachers regularly throughout the years.
So you know that some of his cartoons were about that the America First group was basically here in America during the time of the Nazis were associated with Nazis. Um,
Yeah, Dr.
so
Seuss Goes to War, by the way, is the name of the book.
yeah,
It's fantastic.
yeah, and it's some of it. There is some racism in it, but it was that was the time period, so you have to give that with a grain. You have to understand the time period. You don't have to forgive it because we're looking at it in 2021 eyes, but you have to look at it in that time frame because they also talk about the Japanese and stuff. So, um, but he, the America First thing was a very nationalistic in general, and it was a very. It's also something very fascist, and it's very connected with German fascism, and fascism in general. It's very nationalistic. Uh, Something we
But
talked about when our fascism
the
and
art he was
fascism.
doing was
Go ahead.
very anti-fascist. I don't know.
No. Dr. Seuss was anti-fascist. Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. He was connecting the America First, which is a fascist movement, to the Nazis.
Yes.
But he was trying to connect that, saying these people are just as bad as Nazis.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And it's
and
crazy because like Trump's been doing this America First, and people don't realize like it's historically a dog whistle.
Yeah.
For supremacists.
Correct.
Like we're not making this up, people. We're not making this up. I promise you. Look it up. There are many, many sources.
So, but the connection between that and also religion is that there this So religion has always been interwoven with politics in one way or another. Thomas Jefferson and a lot of the founding fathers tried their best and say, look, don't do this. This is bad, because if this happens, this is why they wanted that freedom of religion and wanted that separation of church and state. And hold on, there is a separation of church and state. I know a lot of people don't believe that. We are not a Christian nation. All right. So I just wanted, those two things to be
Right?
stressed.
God is not mentioned in the Constitution purposefully.
Yeah. That, on our money where it says God we trust, that was put on in the 50s because of the communism and the Red Scare. And that under nation, and the Pledge of Allegiance, where we say one nation under God, that was added down in the 50s as well because of the Red Scare, and that should be excised. So when they talk about creator, it's a general term. It is not a God creator. It's a general term of creator. So they definitely wanted a separation of church and state because they knew how powerful the pulpit was, and they knew how powerful religion was. They knew what happened with the witch trials and stuff like that. And you see it today. You see that pulpit on both sides. You know, the civil rights movement was led by not only. Let me back up. The abolition movement was moved and the anti-abolition movement was both done by pastors, by reverends, and by church movements on both sides of that argument. The same with the civil rights movement; it was done on both sides by the pulpit, and the church is a powerful orchestrator and is a powerful movement. And you get someone who is in there who is a America First fascist speaking, because Christianity as a whole can be very easily tipped to, if you're not careful and if you don't watch yourself, can be very easily tipped into a fascist or into an authoritarian state, and agreeing with authoritarianism, because we are, as a Christian belief, we believe in God the Father as the supreme being and blah 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 and everything else. So if you're not careful, then you start giving divine rights to leadership, and that they are getting the ability to make those kind of decisions.
Do you
And
think
mhm,
monotheism, in particular, is more easily prone to that kind of warping?
it is possible. I can
Sorry,
only,
that's a really big philosophical
yeah.
question, but it occurred to
It
me that
it's a possibility. I can't say for sure, because not necessarily, because it's more of, there is a strong hierarchy if there is an all father. I use that because of the Norse thing, and how some people are misusing Norse mythology as an example. If there is a head god, then that's where
hmm,
if there is a head hierarchy where one person is supreme over the other gods, then that's where you could still have that issue. I think it's more prevalent over. It can be more prevalent over a monotheistic society. You don't see it so much in a Jewish theology, uh, because of the fact that teachers, rabbis, and such have a lot of independence. There's not a high. You also have to look at hierarchy of churches as well. There has to be a structure of a hierarchy of a church system as well.
hmm.
Whereas that's why, like, the Catholic Church was very prone
Okay.
to fascism, or and
Yeah, it
Protestant
makes sense, and
churches.
especially with the specific, like
Mhm.
evangelical, and um, there's another movement within Christianity that is very prone to this sort of hyper masculine and
Right.
nationalistic tendencies. So.
And the thing is, if you, it's either, and you can look at it and the thing is, you look at the mega churches and how, therefore, you're still dogmatic looking at one individual, because the megachurch is built on that one individual and their charismatic personality, and so that megachurch is led by that charismatic personality, and it's a giant church, so it's focused the same way. That's why the Catholic Church has that tendency, if you have that kind of, because it's focused onto a single individual, which was the Pope.
Hmm.
But if you have the megachurch, but if you also have the smaller churches where it's a smaller rural town, but that's the only church, and that's you still, a lot of those small rural towns and stuff like that have that one charismatic preacher, or tent revivalist or whatever. They have that same kind of draw because it's the charismatic person, and they're able to. And
I have such
the
trouble understanding the point of view of those people. I was talking to my husband about that earlier, actually, that people find these figures so charismatic. I mean, Billy Graham or Trump. How he's not attractive, he's not intelligent, he's not well spoken, he's not like I don't understand what this. Oh, he's so charismatic. And my husband said, well, he just says the things out loud that they believe, and
that
that's
yeah
the draw.
that, with Trump, that's the case.
Well, and
There
that's
are,
the case in those pulpits.
in some cases it is. I mean, there are certain, I mean, have you listened to, like, oh, who am I trying to think? Jesse Jackson, whenever he's done a sermon,
Yeah.
there's this rhythm he does that is just so powerful. You get caught up into it. It's like a song almost, or a rhythm, of everything. Um, or if you listen to Martin Luther King and one of his speeches, and how powerful they are, because there's a rhythm to the speech. He knows how to give that speech. Part of charismatic is how to use the English, how to use the language, and how to give that certain speech. Hitler was not attractive. I'm using this as example. Hitler was not attractive, and everything else, and he was not super intelligent. But his speeches, if you listen to his speeches, they have a rhythm to them. They have a cadence to them that is extremely powerful, and you get caught up into that cadence, and it's connects different parts of the brain together. It's a rhythm. It's the musical side, the creative side, as well as the logical side, and it kind of just locks them into place to where that charisma just goes into place. Trump, I don't know why Trump is considered charismatic. I've never thought he was charismatic. I never thought he had much charisma. I don't know how he got away with everything he got away with, but for some reason he was a grifter, and he was able to work however he would work. I never thought he was. But there was something about him that people connected to, and I just didn't see it. Maybe, by that point I had more jaded about me. I don't know, but there was something about him, and it may be that he oozed this machismo. He oozed the self-confidence. He was married to very pretty women the entire time. He was, he always was around pretty people and everything else, and everything else, and he exuded
Well,
this
and it's that
kind of.
weird, like, pretending to have money, right?
Right.
Like, it's that lifestyle. I think it's, and the people that are prone to it are the same kind of voters who vote against their own interests, not understanding how government and taxes actually work, right? They're all so hard done by. And Trump does call to that. I mean, there's a lot of his last few tweets before he was removed from Twitter, talking about, like, during the day after the insurrection was just this. Uh, you are just so hard done by, and you see, all this evil, terrible things done to
Right.
you, and by, all those bad people, and just this, oh, you poor, special, wonderful people, and I know this is hard because you're treated so badly for so long. What?
Mm. Mhm.
No. Like, this is me, my friend Sandra posted the other day. Like, yeah, when I see this guy with his $50,000 truck full of weapons and, with all this equipment and everything, and yeah, that's what I think. Oh boy, that guy is so underprivileged, right?
Right, especially he's got that lift kit and the Yeti things all over the place. Yeah, yeah, and the lights and
Like,
all
what
that. And
has
he's
this
got,
country not given you people? You all
uh,
had the ability to like spend all this money to go on this trip, for one thing. Do you understand how out of reach that is for actual people living in poverty and who are hard done by and who are unemployed and who don't even have food for their kids?
yeah.
Fuck off.
I didn't even get my $600 check. Like, like because of how my taxes and stuff were done the last time, they're just gonna have to give it to me
You'll
as a
get it.
refund.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's just it's like yeah, no, I understand. Someone I want to say this. Someone posted in a conspiracy. It's like, well, it just seems that $600 came at just the time when this trip would been vital. It's like no,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like no, 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 no. It's just it just happened at the same time. It's not because this the reason this was done by Mitch McConnell because he was trying to get those two down in Georgia reelected, and he figured this would help them with that. It had nothing to do with Trump. It was just bad timing was when they got the money and they showed up
Mm-hmm.
there. But I do, speaking of this faith thing, I and maybe this is me and maybe I'm being a bad person, but there are two people that have been in my craw the last few weeks, the last couple of days, everything else that have just made me angry. And I want to speak to them. Okay. So if you'll indulge me for just a moment.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Laura Borgart, your tweet about saying you're a Christian and that you're strongest when you're on your knees. I know you meant you were in prayer. And I hope that you are praying to God to bring you his truth because you have been facing away from him for so long that your prayers are to a false idol and you've been blinded by a golden calf. And this goes for you as well, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You are the Pharisees that Jesus stood against and preached against of stepping away from the poor and the lost so that you could keep your place of privilege. I pray that you and those like you will have the scales fall off your eyes like Paul did on the road to Damascus, and that you will see the hate and sin that you have led so many down, so that you can find the way to atone for those that are lost down that road that you've led them. That's all I got to say because they've they've those two have I don't know what it is about their tweets and about their interviews and everything else, but those two individuals in Congress have really and their faux Christianity have really made gotten me angry lately, and I am not happy about
I can't blame you. It's
it.
giving good
So,
Christians a bad name. It's rough.
mm, yeah, I'm having to have a conversation with Richard Marks because he's an atheist and he's posting these things about these Christians, and I'm like, that's not Christianity, Mr. Marks, and I wished I had more time to explain all of this stuff to
Right.
you.
But unfortunately,
Yeah,
half the
I
nation is buying into that right now
yeah
and calling it Christian.
yeah. Uh, so now we're getting to we've talked about some of the reps being worried about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We are also worried about the fact that tomorrow is the inauguration of our 46th.
Yeah.
And I first heard about this and I'm going, okay, that bothers me a great deal. So the FBI is vetting, revetting, and re-revetting 25,000 National Guard to make sure that there's no possibility of an inside job.
Yeah.
How about we just do it in a vault somewhere with a couple of people and a camera? Can we just do that?
No. No. Like,
Look,
seriously, behaving as if, that's so letting them win. Like, we have to be public, we have to be transparent, we have to stand for what is right, we have to stand in unity. Unfortunately, we've got to, have the damn National Guard sleeping in the Capitol to protect everybody right now. But I think we'll be okay. I am concerned too, seeing the stories. Like, I'm glad they're vetting these people because it's sad and sorry that we have to. And I see a big hole in this, as I was talking before about the whole, white supremacists having infiltrated our armed forces and our police forces, is along with that, the current administration and the DHS and the FBI in place, they're vetting, but what they're vetting against is a list of terrorist groups
right.
and known, organizations. And given that a lot of these groups have not been designated terrorist groups, I mean, even the Proud Boys has, right? But the KKK has not. They
This is
don't have the right list to check against. Like, they're
yeah,
not, the FBI has not been tracking these people as in that category.
they really need to call the Southern Poverty Law Center, and it's like, hey,
Yeah.
what is the
They
list
need to use the Southern
of
Poverty Law
terrorists?
Center's list. They need
Yeah,
to talk to the hacker that backed up
yeah,
Parler. And,
yeah,
excuse me, just grab those names, check it against that. Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, they need both of those because it's just like can we not? Yeah, that's I'm just like
I think it's going to be okay. Just the sheer presence of the security in place now, as it is.
mhm.
Those people are cowards. I
Yeah,
believe
they're
that those people, the type that of the ilk that stormed the Capitol,
right,
in their
and the
hearts are cowards and will not
and
move
the
against armed men and
well,
women.
yeah, and even if they're standing there, their brother on their left and their soldier on the left and the soldier on the right would stop them. So that's what we're also hoping for as well. So uh, if that's the case, if someone is actually going to try to be that brave, but yeah, you're probably right. I'm hoping. Look, we've got what we've got. This is what
And there are
12,
enough good people out there. I mean, we did win the damn election. It's just true.
right. There's 81 million of us that won the election. I sent you that video. I don't know if you watched that 9 minute plus video. That was just like a wake up call to Republicans, and that was a powerful video. It's like, no, you've been lied to this entire time,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to, we need to wake you up, and we need to get you. They're afraid. They're already starting to put this re-education thing, and I'm like, not re-education, but maybe an education would be nice. That would be great.
Yeah.
You know, an education would be great. So the last thing there, is four
Impeachment?
times in this nation we have impeached a president. And two of those times was the same president within 4 years, actually within a year, and that would be Donald Trump. This time he was impeached in less than a week for um, for inciting sedition.
Which is nuts.
And yeah, yeah, and then of course Mitch McConnell refused to bring the Senate back to vote on removing him because what kind of danger could he impose in 9 days?
That's I'm I'm gonna be okay with that just because it is giving us a chance to get some stuff in place
Yeah.
until the um, inauguration tomorrow. Also, it gives time for a proper trial in the Senate so that we can get some things added that aren't always added to an
Yeah.
impeachment to prevent him to run from office ever again.
Yeah.
I would like to see that put in there, and that would have been, I think, harder to do while he was still seated.
Agreed. And there were actually 10 GOP House members that actually voted with the Democrats
Yeah.
to impeach, and this is the first time it's been bipartisan, or this has been the most. I should say this has been the most bipartisan impeachment ever. And one of those individuals is that did it was the third ranking member of the GOP caucus, and that would have been Liz Cheney. And it burns that I agree with Liz Cheney. Can we impeach him again just because I have to agree with Liz Cheney? Can we impeach him just for that? Because, ow, that hurts.
It's okay. I mean, and I don't think we're doing, I don't know, anybody any favors pointing out, I mean, that it's bipartisan. I mean, it's not heavily bipartisan. It was only 10 of the GOP, but look at where the pipe bombs were that the
Yeah.
rioters placed. They aren't really with either party. They're not. I bet most of them are registered, unaffiliated,
Yeah.
or libertarian, honestly.
Probably.
I mean, yeah, we tend to think because of our our ideologies that these are all Republicans, but I don't believe that is necessarily the case. It's not the case. There's one person I know that actually, I believe, well, no, one of the people I know that went is a Republican, but he also didn't riot. He left when the shit started to hit the fan. But I mean, they planted bombs at the Democratic headquarters and at the Republican headquarters, and they were looking to string up Mike Pence.
Yeah.
So these crazy fuckers.
Well, yeah, some people thinking that was, and it did part of the job was to pull officers away from the Capitol to deal with those pipe bombs. So there was a bit of a coordination on that front. So there, I will say this: I'm going to be generous. 85 to 90% of those people got caught up in the moment and went in there and was all yeehaw and didn't know what they were doing and were just got caught up in the moment. I do believe there were probably anywhere from 15 to 10% of that people that had a coordinated idea of what they wanted to do.
And yeah, and the danger of the inside people and people like what Trump did to incite a group without a clear goal. Like demonstrations and protests are generally managed in a way where they have a goal. You have your speakers, and then you have, food trucks or whatever. You have a rally
Right.
and the speakers, and then people go home. Not now. I think you should go to March to the Capitol and fight like hell.
Right.
And then not expect anything to come of that. But when it was, I mean, I was reading about the people that were there from the day before for the Jericho protest, which was a Jericho march, which is about bringing a damn wall down, and they're marching to the Capitol, and then you've got them ramped up, and those people were like following many different sources. It was just all these little tiny pockets of crazy, and not organized. Just everyone was angry and went somewhere. What did they think was going to happen?
Right.
I mean, and then they get maced, and they're like, they can't call for a medic because they don't have one, because it wasn't a legitimate use of your First Amendment rights. It wasn't a planned, organized protest. It was a bunch of angry people saying, hey, let's go do a thing.
Right.
It was, yeah. And if you were there, you were complicit. I feel like
Yeah.
you encouraged the vandals just because you did not enact violence doesn't just it
It
doesn't
doesn't. It
excuse you
right.
in your attitude and your support of what happened. And I don't want to hear about, violence being only, oh, well, only 5 people died. Fuck off. Violence actually, by definition, is also against property. And, oh, and what a mess they left. Ugh.
Well, and Trump signed an executive order that anybody who did damage to federal property should spend at least 10 years in jail.
Well, yeah, that's only for people of color.
Oh, I hope not. We'll see how that works out, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
we'll see.
The FBI seems to be very serious about this. The FBI and the DA
Yeah, I
in
actually want
DC.
to ask you, do you know if there has been any beefing up of security? Have you heard about any in the state capitals? Because I know there's been chatter about stuff going on tomorrow at state capitals, but I haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard anything, but that doesn't mean that isn't there. I haven't just because I haven't heard anything doesn't mean that they probably don't have some additional National Guards being called up or whatever. I haven't looked per se.
Okay. Well,
But I
I'll
would
look later.
probably say they probably have. Especially in North Carolina, I bet you could probably look and see that the National Guard's probably been called up. Especially because they just did before we went on air, there was a COVID update. And I'm sure that went over like a lead balloon. Because he didn't change any of the restrictions, my understanding. So
Yeah, I'll check Jeff Jackson's page. He'll
yeah.
probably have something.
So
anyway.
yeah, so be careful out there. Stay safe out there. Everyone celebrate safely. Be careful. And tomorrow will be a good day. So, we were going to bring this up because this was something that I brought up to you last night, and that was about the Maya Angelou thing, about the inauguration.
Yeah, but I mean, we could do that
We'll
another
do
time.
we'll do that. We'll talk about the inauguration. We'll talk about our past inauguration experiences. How's that sound on our return visit when we come back?
Good.
Okay, that way it'll be a joyful occasion because we are putting the Trump administration to bed. We're closing the door to the last 4 years to the Trump administration. So before we get to our characteristic of this week, Brother Boy, will you lead us in a word of prayer?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
All right, there's no stick this week because we've done a bunch of sticks. So this was a stick week. Yeah, we just put out a bundle of sticks and was like, all right, here's a stick for you and a stick for you. Do you want to go with the first? But we do have 2 carrots.
Well, it's a little tricky because the first carrot we gave to Randy Rainbow. I will put the link in our chat and I'll put it on our website to his little video Sedition. Funny song based on a song from Rent, all about how what happened on January 6th. And calling Trump out on it hard.
Well, I put up 2 songs. One was Sedition, and that was the one based on Tradition by Fiddler on the Roof. The second song he put out was
the Seasons of Trump. Right.
Yeah.
With unlimited DVR included. Easily
Sorry.
The second one is the one that is basically putting the Trump administration to bed for himself as well, which is Seasons of Trump, which is based off of the song Seasons of Love off of
Seasons of
Rent.
Love from Rent.
And I've been listening to that all day because it just is like it caught me. I've never listened to Rent. I didn't even, I knew of Rent, but I'm not a musical theater person. So
I love his
uh,
costuming in the one that's
of Sedition.
yeah,
Yeah,
from
great.
Fiddler, being all that he's got the Hasidic
And
costume. It's hilarious.
I was in Fiddler in the Roof, so that one I knew. I was actually in Fiddler in the Roof in high school, and I can't sing, so but they made me be in Fiddler in the Roof because I looked the part
I've
of
watched it.
late.
I've never been in a production of that.
I was the butcher. Because I walked in, I was doing music theory my last year in high school, and the teacher that was doing music theory also did drama and chorus. And I walked in the first day of school and she of class, and she was like, "You're going to be my laser wolf." And I'm like, "What is a laser wolf?" And she's like, "Oh, it's in our musical." It's like, "Oh, I can't sing." And she was one of those choir directors that thought everybody could sing. Yeah, she found out she was wrong. She retired the next year, so I made her
Hmm.
retire. like, that's like I tried to warn you. I can't sing. That's why I'm in band next door. I cannot sing. So, but she made me still do the part of Laser Wolf, and Laser Wolf has a duet. So basically, I just said the words in rhythm. like tried to tell you. But first ever golden carrot goes to Officer Eugene Goodman. For those who don't know, this is the African American or the black officer. I keep saying African American. It's an old habit. I'm breaking it. The black officer that was leading a bunch of uh, rioters and terrorists up a flight of stairs. And the video, everybody's seen this video. He looks to the left and sees that the door to the Senate chamber is open, and he leads them away from that open door. He is basically using himself as bait for these white supremacists so that he can lead them away from the Senate chamber.
Yep. He taunted them and led them away from that door. And I saw a timeline in a different article of this, and it was like a minute. It was the in the same minute within a minute the Capitol Police inside the chamber secured that door.
Mm. So
Like,
he is a hero. He is, he risked his life. He could have, because he was outnumbered 10-1, 20-1, and he was black, and these were, definitely they were coming after him. Some of those shirts were saying that they would have done a lot of damage to him, and he was a brave
did his
man,
job.
and he deserves a
Save.
Medal of Freedom and a raise. So, do you have any final thoughts before we move on?
Nope.
All right. So, no show next week. Following week, we'll cover present, the current, and and some of our past memories of inaugurations. Until then, I want to thank you for joining us at Heresy and Hearsay. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. You can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and any podcast catcher. You can also find us on our website. Just Google us. Don't forget our Patreon page where $2 a month can keep this show going.
And I'm September. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12. That's NINEOF12. And you can hear me on the Geek Grills podcast. Thank you for listening today, and bless your hearts. Okay, who's on? I'm not going to raid. Nobody's watching. Boo.